righty. Thank you, everybody, for coming. Can you guys all hear me okay? Is that all right? Yes? Good. Louder? I feel like I'm yelling if I go louder. Is that good? Yeah? Okay, what about now? That's good? Okay. All right, everybody. Thank you guys for coming. I know in your program that it says that Daisy is going to be facilitating this. There was a change. It is now me, and I hope you guys don't mind. All right? All right, guys. And then, so I'll introduce myself. I am Michelle. I'm a Starbucks partner in Mesa, Arizona. And I'm so excited for you guys to meet this panel if you guys don't know them already. I personally, when I found out, was geeking out that I get to be up here with them. So I say we start there, and let's go ahead and go down the line, and everybody introduce yourself.
Hi, everybody. My name is Bill Whitmire. I'm a shift supervisor at Starbucks Scottsdale Mayo in Phoenix, Arizona.
Hello, my name is Will Westlake. I am a barista in Buffalo, New York at the Camp Row location.
Hi, my name is Jazz Brissack. I am a barista at the Elmwood store in Buffalo, which was the first union Starbucks.
Hi guys, I'm Layla Dalton. I worked at the same store as Bill Whitmire, Scottsdale and Mayo. I was a supervisor until I was unjustly fired.
Hello everyone, my name is Lydia Claypool. I'm a shift supervisor at the store in Overland Park, Kansas. I was recently reinstated, but yeah, fired partner as well.
Hi everyone, my name is Kyla Clay. I am a barista at 1304 Commonwealth Avenue, the first store to unionize in Massachusetts by like 2 seconds.
Hi, I'm Mason Boykin. My pronouns are he, they. I'm from Jacksonville, Florida, the San Jose and Ricky Drive location.
All right, so let's get going. I'm sure quite a bit of you guys know the Starbucks Workers United and the movement, right, that Starbucks is unionizing across the country. So I figured we'd kick it off right from the beginning and talk to Jazz and ask her why, like, why? Why did we start this?
So this started before I even got to Starbucks. One of the first people to get involved with the campaign got involved while we were actually organizing a different coffee shop chain called Spot Coffee in Buffalo. And her name was Lexi Rizzo. She was a shift supervisor at the Genesee store that voted at the same time and then was certified after the NLRB had to sort out some of Starbucks' shenanigans. And Lexi had said, 2 years before the start of the campaign that she wanted to unionize Starbucks and that, she loved her job, and she wanted it to be the best that it could possibly be. And her slogan was, "We fight for what we love." And I think that that's motivated the campaign from the beginning. The folks who started this and the folks who've carried it across the country have been some of the best and most passionate baristas. I've learned how to make pour-overs from Michelle Eisen and Michael Sanabria, who, bring so much love of their craft. And that is the standard. That's not an anomaly.
All right, and then Kyla, in previous conversations that we've had, I know that you had said that your eyes were on Buffalo in watching what they were doing. So I was curious, watching that, what made your store want to join and file?
Yeah, for me, I remember reading in the news, August, October, November, what was going on in Buffalo. And to be very frank, I did not know what a union was. But I could tell that Starbucks was clearly very afraid of what was happening, and I was infuriated by the way that they were treating the baristas. And so I started Googling, what is a union? And I started learning more, and really the spark that got that Google search going was anger, but I think that it's the continued organizing is really out of love for our coworkers and wanting to have a better workplace and a recognized voice. So I started reaching out to my first coworker that I reached out to, who's in the crowd today, Ash. I reached out to them because I felt like they were the closest person I had who I could get this all started with. And it was really easy to talk to other coworkers because they were also seeing what was happening in the news, and they were also really upset with how Starbucks was treating the baristas in Buffalo. And I think that was really what helped rally us together so we could stand in solidarity with the partners in Mesa and the partners in Buffalo, and that was really what kicked it all off.
Okay. And Layla, do you wanna?
Yeah, so Starbucks was my first job ever. I started working right when I turned 17. And let's just say from the start, I was thrown in on the floor. I didn't know what was right, what was wrong, and I mean, my first manager went on a trash run and never came back. So, yeah, literally never came back. And I was a minor. That was my first 10-hour shift, actually, which, according to Starbucks, they care about their partners, their customers, and they say that they would not allow a minor, to not have a lunch, to not go over 12 hours, but they still did that. So from the start, it's been a rough ride, and I never knew what a union was. I never heard the word union. I mean, I know, like, you can unite with people, but it wasn't the same way. And what really started, like, what pushed me is I was told that right after I got out of the hospital that I must demote myself if I want to work 3 days a week for just 1 month. And they were making me put my education, my mental and physical health before like they wanted work to be first. And I just realized that I deserved a lot more, and that's when my co-leader, who's over here, Bill Whitmire, he came up to me and he's like, we could make a change. There is one thing we can do. Because I kept talking to management. I kept talking to my district manager, and that's when I was like, well, I guess we can start a union because there's nothing else. And I felt like I had to quit because they wanted me to put work before my health, my education, and a part of the reason I'm at Starbucks is I get free school, so it doesn't really make sense. But that's really what pushed me. I just feel like we shouldn't feel that we have to put work first, because at the end of the day, our health, our safety, the wage we get, everything that matters, and they just see us as a body, and I realized that right after I started my union.
And Mesa, you're Mason, you're in Florida. And I know that we had a lot of the same concerns, right? Being in a right-to-work state and just watching everything and not, sure of really anything, right? So I'm curious about your store and why.
So at my original store, the store that I was hired at, it was a cafe location. Within my first year of working there, I had been through 5 managers, store managers. The turnover was like a manager every 3 months or something like that. This was back in like 2019, 2020. We had thought about it, but it was so far out of our reach, at least we thought. Like anytime you'd bring it up, it was, oh, but like we're a right to work state. Like we can't do that. That doesn't happen down here. So it went kind of cold, kind of quiet, and my store closed down. I transferred to the store that I'm at now. And that was around the time that stuff was happening up north. And I still had that energy in the back of my mind, but I was like, well, maybe it was just my store where I had those experiences, because that's what we all hope, right? That it's an isolated event. And so when I got to Ricky Drive, one of the first couple conversations I had with them was about how they had just lost one of their managers because they were fired for the activities that they were doing in the store, telling people you can't discuss your wages on the floor. Shocking. And I was like, wait a minute, so how many managers have you guys had? And they told me like 4 or 5 within a year. And I'm like, the turnover is the same everywhere you go? Like you're having these same experiences? That's crazy. And one day I was walking across the street to a Publix. It's a grocery store down in the South. And we were converting our tips. And I asked one of my now OC members, I just straight up said, like, would you want to organize a union with me? And she was like, hell yeah. I was like, from the South, that right to work mentality, that was something that was really important to me, organizing down there. We're unfortunately bred with complacency, and it's not our fault, right? It's what we're forced and learned in school. And so the first store in Florida had filed to petition in Tallahassee, and January, I think, late January, and I was like, oh my God, okay, so if Tallahassee's doing it, then yes, Florida, let's go. And so just growing the Southern movement has been really important. We've got stores all over Florida, Alabama, the Carolinas and Virginia. So just trying to break that mentality. I remember a conversation I had on the floor one of the first times. We were spitballing ideas. I was like, are you guys familiar with the union? Like, have you been seeing what's going on in Buffalo? And one of my partners was like, oh, but we're a right to work state. It'll never happen. And I was like, okay, I have to nip that in the bud real fast. And it's been difficult, but undoing that, unlearning that, those behaviors and that mentality, it's working. It's slowly happening, and we unionized, so.
Being down in Mesa, when Buffalo was doing their thing, we all had our eyes on them, and we're watching everything. We were unsure that this. The reality is, we didn't even know that this was something that you can do. Some of us knew what a union was, some of us didn't, but we knew that what they were doing was something big. And our manager at the time ended up being the whistleblower and losing her job over that. She got fired. And so for us as a store, we loved our manager. We wanted that support. And seeing what they did to her, we knew that that wasn't right. And so we were all ready and willing to walk out right then and there. And that's when somebody put in the chat, talk to Michelle, she knows about the union. And the reality is I didn't. I just was watching Buffalo and I would talk about it. So we reached out, and we filed 2 days later. Buffalo, yeah, Buffalo was there for us the whole time, and it's really great. The relationships that you make in this, in what we're doing in this campaign is really the most amazing thing, in my opinion. Not only do I get to have these relationships that have now grown into personal friendships, right? But it's this trust that this bond, it just builds. It's amazing. So we obviously couldn't fit all, people from all 150 plus stores that have unionized up here. But there are definitely a lot of partners who definitely deserve a shout out for all the work that they're doing. And so I think we should go down the line real quick. Bill, you want to start us off?
Yeah, so shout out for partners, for sure. So I thought about this a lot, and I'm going to have to give a huge shout out to my friend down there, Layla Dalton, and here's why. When I talked to Layla about the union, Layla took a huge risk. She took a bigger risk than she ever thought she was going to be taking. Layla loves her job with Starbucks. We all love our jobs with Starbucks. That's why we do what we do. That's why we show up every day. And we live the Starbucks mission. That's what we're trying to do, is get Starbucks to live the mission that they've created. They don't live it on paper, but we live it every day. But anyway, when Layla agreed to that on the phone, Layla's a leader, and between Layla and I, we started signing union cards back of house same day. And after what's come out in court lately, I guarantee you that the district manager and the store management, probably regional management, watched all of that on surveillance video, folks. We were signing, folks, we got 14 cards signed back of house within 2 days. So Layla's been there through thick and thin through this whole campaign, and I told Layla, we don't know what we're up against. There's going to be huge pressure on us. I had no idea what was going to come down on us, and I sure had no idea what was going to come down on Layla. And I asked her, here's what I asked her, folks. I said, no matter what, don't quit. Don't quit, because that's what they want. And you know what? She never quit. No matter what they did to her, she kept showing up every single day, and she had a target on her back. And so, you know what? That's why my shout out goes to her, because hey, it took 2 district managers to fire her. She wouldn't back down. So that's my shout out.
So the week after we won the first store at Elmwood, we got maybe about 10 emails from workers all across the country that immediately wanted to organize their stores. And it wasn't something that we had planned at all for it to happen. But maybe about 3 or 4 weeks in, we got 4 different emails from stores in Oklahoma, specifically all in Oklahoma City. And we didn't have an organizer to help do that in Oklahoma. So I took that on. And the first person that I met, their name is Toby Jimenez. And so I wanted to shout out Toby for being a leader that, not only was able to foster a union at their own store, but also being able to foster, community in Oklahoma City. And now today we have 3 stores that have won their elections and 1 more on the way. This is a state that, is redder than red, but, we're changing what that means, I think.
There's been so many incredible partners that I've gotten to meet as a result of this campaign. It's an incredibly hard thing to pick. I want to talk for a second about what's been going on in Ithaca, New York. Ithaca was the first city that was 100% unionized in the United States. All of the stores in Ithaca filed together. That was a deliberate decision. They decided to hold back the first stores that could file to file for the whole city at once. And they overcame everything that Starbucks could throw at them and won all 3 overwhelmingly. And then, they faced all the union busting before and after, hours cuts, people being forced out, transfers and requests off being denied. And then at the College Avenue store, the most profitable store in their district, the grease trap overflowed. And they were expected to work in unsafe conditions with, oil and maggots in the back of house. And this was a fixable thing. But instead of fixing the grease trap or, applying for the permits to do so, Starbucks decided to try to make an example and retaliate against the store by closing the College Avenue store. So I want to shout out the College Avenue partners and Benjamin South for standing up to Starbucks and leading a fight to show that Starbucks isn't going to get away with retaliation and that partners are going to have each other's backs no matter what happens.
Yeah, so just like Jazz said, there's too many partners. I can't name how many partners that have been there for me the whole entire time, especially the fired partners, since I'm now part of the fired crew. That's what we call it. And we have people all the way, I never thought I was going to get in this movement. And as much as there's so many people, the one person that has never, I'm going to cry, was Bill. Every single day, I got pulled in the back room. I would call Bill, and he would do anything. The day I got fired, he started driving before I got fired because I knew what was happening. Every single time I got pulled in the back, I always said, what, am I getting fired? And they're like, not today. That's kind of funny, but but this time I said, "Am I getting fired?" And they're like, "We just want to talk." And I went in the back. I called Bill. I said, "It's happening. It's happening. I've been fighting for 3 months, and they're firing me. They're over it because I wouldn't quit. I mean, I just wouldn't. So without Bill, I wouldn't be able to do it because he would sit on the phone with me for 4 or 5 hours every single day. He would just say, "It's okay, Layla, I'm here. No matter what, we're a team." So thank you, Bill, for just being the best co-leader ever.
Similar to Layla's point, being part of the partners that have been fired across the country, I just want to take a second to just shout out to all of them because they're some of the most incredible people I've ever met in my life. The level of resilience that they have is really inspiring. Specifically in my store, there is a leader who was pushed out, who started our whole campaign in Overland Park, and she was instrumental to us organizing. She came up to me in the back room and was like, "Hey, this store is a disaster. We need to do something about it. We've been seeing what's going on in Buffalo and all over the country. And yeah, we just would not be where we were or where we are without her." And yeah, all the fired partners are really inspiring, and I'm fighting for reinstatement until all of us get justice. So.
So I want to spotlight a partner in Massachusetts, although we've definitely been able to make so many ties with partners throughout the country. I want to shout out Bailey, a 16-year partner who describes himself as a pretty average person with a Bruce Springsteen tattoo. But I would describe them as a pretty badass organizer with a Bruce Springsteen tattoo. I called Bailey before we started handing out cards at our store because I knew that she would be a good person to talk to. And she was definitely intrigued, but they were definitely unsure as well because they just transferred to a new store and didn't really want to start that there. And then one day I got an email from somebody from her store, and I was incredibly excited, and the first thing I wanted to do was tell Bailey. And since then, she's just been an invaluable organizer. She's a natural. They've stepped up in so many different ways. They lead mental health conversations at the end of our weekly meetings. They've helped really lead the educational component of our campaign, and they've really stepped up communications because they are just very good at putting things together in a concise way. So I want to shout out Bailey. Thank you so much for all of that, all that you've done in Massachusetts.
So my Southern folks mean a lot to me. I have a couple partners in mind that I want to talk about. First one is Maggie Carter from the Knoxville, Tennessee store. I walked into work one day, and one of my partners came up to me really concerned. She pulls me into the back room, and she's like, "Mason, you're being paid to organize? Like, you're being paid more money than me?" And I'm like, "What are you talking about?" She's like, "Yeah, our boss said that our manager said that you're being compensated and that you're asked by the union to organize specifically in our store." And I started freaking out. I don't know why. I guess I was just my feelings got really hurt, and I was like, why are they lying about me? Also, I have no money. I'm not being paid. I promise you. And so I started tweeting about it. I was really pissed off. I started texting as many people as I could to get what do I do? I don't want my name slandered like this. And I don't remember who it was. I think it might have been Casey, another partner who needs to be shouted out from Buffalo, Casey Moore. she got me in contact, I'm pretty sure, with Maggie and was like, hey, like this partner experienced something really similar in her store. Like, I think that you guys need to have a conversation. And I got Maggie's phone number. We hopped on a phone call, and is that Southern love. Like, I felt like I had seen her after having seeing her for years. Like, we had the most genuine, like, heartfelt conversation. She made me feel, Starbucks has this little phrase, seen, heard, and valued. I had never felt more seen, heard, and valued until I spoke to Maggie. It was insane. And then she like kept me on the phone for an hour. Like, we were chatting, and I don't know. And now I have her anytime I need help. Anytime she needs help, like we have each other in our back pocket. She's great. And then just the rest of my Florida crew, my Tallahassee partners. There's a couple of them here. And then also Miami Springs is here too, and just the whole South. I got to go to the Southern Regional Workers United Conference in Atlanta a couple weeks ago, and I got to meet some partners from the first store in Boone, North Carolina too, and I was like, that's crazy, that was cool. And just getting to build that solidarity amongst each other, and getting to meet everybody, so yeah.
And then I'm going to shout out Michelle Eisen. She played a huge role in building the trust and, for our store and helping our store be so successful and just so comforting. Even 2,000 miles away, our store just felt everything from her. And I think that these relationships that are built from even these long distances are really the root of this campaign, and just how it's been so successful. We always say partner to partner. I'm sure you guys have heard that as well, and that's the truth. So with the partner to partner guidance, that's how, when we take on new stores, right? So Michelle had helped us, and now here I am helping other stores get off the ground. It's unlike anything you've ever seen. It's absolutely amazing. Kyla, do you want to talk about your store and your experience? Your area.
Yeah, like Michelle said, I think that we've all relied on other partners throughout this process. Big shout out to Buffalo for helping us through this all. So after our store filed, we actually filed along with another store in Massachusetts in Coolidge Corner. So we beat them in the twin race for being the first to file. But since then, we got a bunch of people that started reaching out to us, asking, like, how can we do this too throughout Massachusetts? And we've now helped 16 stores file. And the way that we've really done that is by looking through, how did we do this? What did we do in order to file? What did we do in order to win? And essentially try to streamline that process and help create resources and materials that can eliminate all of the administrative barriers to unionizing. And so that way the partners can focus primarily on just building their organizing committee and building those relationships at their store. And so that was like the first step. How can we make this easier? How can we streamline that process? And then we started thinking, okay, now we've got all these stores that want to file. Well, they still need a whole bunch of resources. So then we started making union starter kits. So anytime a store wants to file, we pack them up like a little bag full of buttons, their union signing cards, shirts, leaflets, you name it. And we start delivering that to other stores and just essentially providing mentorship throughout the process. There's so many things that we've all seen and that we've all experienced. And so we can share that information with stores that are starting that process too. And with that, we've also created national trainings to help partners, have the resources to do this. We have national trainings on partner-to-partner organizing, sharing information on how we've streamlined that process. We also have national trainings on unfair labor practices, so that way partners know how to spot them, how to report them, and how to help their partners through that too. And I think that's really where the success of our campaign has come from, is that it's so worker-led, it's so partner-to-partner. We are all giving each other the knowledge that we've learned and sharing resources so everyone can, whatever the next store is, hopefully we'll have an easier process than the one that came before them. Yeah.
Yeah. So what we focus on is pretty much our experience is that every store is a little bit different, and so the store-by-store organizing really has to do with about the dynamics within the store. And so what we like to do is help that store figure out what's the best way to communicate with each other. So for example, what worked for us was literally word of mouth communication. We didn't use a lot of tech. I mean, trust me, I'm older, so I can barely use Snapchat, okay, folks? But everybody in our store uses Snapchat, okay? But really in the campaign, that wasn't really used. It was really word of mouth, and it was phone. We did a lot of telephone stuff. And so when we talk to stores on how they're going to create their campaign, we just say, hey, what's the best way you guys can get information to each other quickly? Because that's the thing. If something happens in their store, they need to be able to disseminate that information quickly so everybody knows what's going on and what to expect when they walk in. If they've been off a day or two, they're going to know, oh my gosh, I may walk in and I may get confronted, or this may happen to me. They know what's happening. So that's kind of what we focus on. And when people reach out to us, sometimes they're reaching out for help or for guidance, and we're able to just, let them know where we've come from, what we've experienced, and that way they can pass it on to their partners. And so that's what we focus on, is just the communication end and helping the store find what works for them, to communicate with each other. And then, of course, there's the education piece as well. And then there's this whole partner network, right? So between Buffalo and Mesa, that's really who we work with, who I've worked with a lot. When questions come up, it's like, oh my gosh, I don't know how to answer that question. But we've got this whole network across the United States that can help us out. Everybody's a phone call away. There's people sitting in here right now that I've called, and I can say, I don't know how to answer this question, but we can get an answer real quick and get back to those partners. So we've got this huge network that we can help everybody out.
Going along with what Bill said about, just educating people as we're going through this and educating people in real time, I think this campaign is no different from so many other campaigns in that our biggest enemy is fear. And every call that I go into, every Zoom call when I'm meeting a new store, I ask, what's your name? Are you a barista or shift supervisor? How long have you been at the company? And what is the worst thing that you've heard about the union? Because we just need to go ahead and dispel that right now, So, we go through and we have a, fake manager presentation. Hi, I'm Will. I'm your new support manager. I just am here to make sure that everything's going well at the store. I know that there have been issues in the past, but I really want to make sure that you feel heard at this time. I really want to make sure that, we reach you and that we're hearing partners right now, in this really difficult time. And I know there's a lot just going on, and, Roe v. Wade, that's really hard. And, the Supreme Court, that's really hard. And, so just tell me, what can we fix about the store right now? And that way, when the partners are in the store and they're hearing the same exact words from their manager, they're going to hear the same exact words from 4 or 5 managers over the next few months. They're going to be ready. They're going to be prepared. In Buffalo, in so many ways, we weren't prepared for what was going to happen, but we've been able to take that to learn from it, and we've been able to turn it on its head. So that way, it's no longer partners that are crying when they're leaving these meetings with managers. Oftentimes, it's the managers who are crying. Because they're ashamed of what they're doing, because what they're doing is shameful.
All right, so we're talking about support managers, so that leads us obviously into the union busting. Jazz, you want to start it off?
Sure. So I think going back to right before, or something Will said, we weren't prepared for what they were going to hit us with in Buffalo. In fact, it sounds really naive, but Starbucks, said they were a different kind of company. They said that they, saw things through the lens of humanity. They called us partners. And we were like, they could sign the fair election principles. They might actually just, respect our right to organize. That was not true. As soon as we'd filed for the first 3 union elections in Buffalo, Rosanne Williams, until today, the president of Starbucks North America, we outlasted Rosanne. No, she got on a plane to Buffalo to lead what Starbucks was internally calling the Buffalo SWAT team, which was a group of about 200 managers and executives who swarmed into our stores, occupied them, pulled us into captive audience meetings, swept our floors, cleaned our bathrooms, and threatened our benefits. And it wasn't successful, but we could have organized every store in Buffalo had Starbucks not brought down this wrath. And they used every loophole they could find. The labor board is still, operating under the Trump NLRB rules, and they found every way to delay our elections. Colin Cochran, who's here, is at the Walden Anderson store that Starbucks closed down right after they filed for an election. The NLRB made them pull their petitions to not restart the clock on the first elections. And they still, 10 months later, haven't gotten a fair election or a date after Starbucks has made an election or a fair election impossible.
Mason?
It's so funny that you mentioned the managers crying because, it's so, at first you want to be like, wow, okay, I actually feel kind of bad for you. You feel kind of shitty and you want to be empathetic. And then you hear that every single manager is having breakdowns on the floor. And it just takes away any empathy you felt. It honestly just ridicules all the emotions the rest of us feel. We had that happened at my store too and around Florida. I know that we would be, our closing shifts, our manager would schedule themselves to close and would hold partners on the side and have a breakdown about how horrible the union is and beg them to vote no. And I'd have partners come up to me and be like, is it true? I'm like, what are you talking about? Well, so-and-so, redacted, was sobbing. And I was like, oh my gosh, first of all, fake tears. But the captive audience meetings are something I want to talk about because I think that was the worst shift I'd ever had in my entire life. I actually cried for about the whole time, actually, and then for about 2 hours afterwards, my partners and I stood outside of our store. So they did them in groups of 4 to 3, so 4 managers and 3 partners. They also separated us very strategically. Anybody who was a minor was grouped together. Our organizing committee was grouped together. Siblings were grouped together. Any sort of you can see what they're doing there, that was intentional. And so it was store manager, district manager, another random district manager, and a partner resources representative, which is our human resources. And they closed our store down from one evening until the next morning, mid-afternoon, and they cycled us through. Fortunately for most of my partners, it was a free hour, right? They got free hour of labor, or of pay. But for some of us, this was a moment where they harvested our emotions. They sat us down and they said, Mason, tell us everything that you've been through. We want to make it better. And I figured, what the hell? How many opportunities do you get to sit down with all of these managers and say, this is the shitty stuff you've done to me this whole time? So I took them up on it. But I think the response that I got was what screwed me up so bad. I'm sitting here sobbing. I'm crying about how one of my managers told me I don't know what it's like to be trans or queer because I've never transitioned, so I should just shut up about trans issues. And they stared at me. No, nothing. I can't even put it into words. They said nothing for a whole hour. I was crying, and they said, Mason, you're allowed to feel that way. And that's it. And it was just the partner resources kept reaching their hand out. Mason, this is your right, and you're allowed to feel that way. And I was just so shocked. And my manager didn't say anything for the whole hour. My district manager, this is my favorite story. I had transferred to this store in September. We filed in February. I had never met the district manager. I meet the district manager during our captive audience meeting. I look at her and I say, I don't even know who you are. And she was like, no, I've been here. And I was like, hey, I work 4:30 to 1 o'clock every single day. I don't know who you are. This is not a direct connection. But yeah, it was just, those captive audience meetings, I don't know, just so inhumane and crazy. And then one other little funny, like kind of, not necessarily union busing, but story I do want to tell. When we did first start filing, my manager, of course, was freaking out and trying to figure out how to start everything. Started sweeping our lobby. We were surprised. And then was quoted as Googling in the back room on the Starbucks issued laptop, "What is a union?"
Well, I guess we have a pretty similar Google history. Yeah. So our store filed December 11th, I believe. It was right after Buffalo won their election. We did that on purpose. And our captive audience sessions began pretty soon thereafter. Thank you to Buffalo for making us a little captive audience bingo sheet, because our very first captive audience session, I printed out a bunch of bingo sheets for everybody, and we purposely played it while wearing our Starbucks Workers United shirts throughout that meeting. And those sessions were, in one way, they were hell, but in the other way, it was kind of fun because we all were very prepared for them. During these captive audience sessions, we were specifically told that we would lose the ability to transfer to different stores, to have partners from other stores pick up shifts at our store and vice versa. We were told plenty of things that were very much not true. And I'm very fortunate to have a law degree in education that I was able to, push back against that as strongly as I could. But I was gaslit by our regional vice president, Amy Tingler. And Amy consistently told me I was wrong, that that's not true, and I would stand my ground as best as I could, but she definitely would make me feel like I was wrong. And I didn't want to be saying the wrong thing in front of my coworkers and, be a mistrustworthy source. But luckily, Amy came back the next time for a captive audience session, and she said, I want to start by apologizing to everyone. I was wrong, and Kyla was right. Mind you, this was only after she tone policed me as well. But what I found to be really successful about these captive audience sessions from the union's perspective is that not only do we have these bingo sheets, but because we were broken up into these groups, what we would do is the first group would show pictures of all of the propaganda that they received, or they would send us messages about what the topic was that day. And then we would share that with the partners at the other store that had filed, and we would prepare our rebuttals, kind of like on a debate team. And we would go into those sessions prepared to continuously shut down every single thing that they said. And we made it a point to do that. We would snap for each other, we would agree with each other, and I think it felt very empowering for us to go into those sessions knowing that we were right and that they were wrong. And we were quite successful because they actually stopped doing captive audience sessions in Massachusetts. And I found this out because I was working with another store that had petitioned, and they heard their district manager saying, no, we're not doing captive audience sessions anymore, those don't work. So, unfortunately, now what they do is one-on-ones, which I think can be more like three-on-ones because they'll bring in a couple of other managers to go in on those meetings. But we continue to prepare our partners the same way that we did during those captive audience sessions, except now we have plenty more resources and information to provide them. So it's still a hurdle for us, but it's, I definitely think we've beat them at their own game a few times now.
Very similar experiences with captive audience meetings. In the Kansas and Kansas City area. As soon as we went public with our union, our district manager took it very personally. She came in that week and said that we stabbed her in the back. And she also pretended like she had no idea about all of the safety and inventory and partner concerns that we were having. She was made very aware of all of those issues. But our store has a really unique setup. We are 2 shipping containers put together. So we don't have a cafe. We have a walk-up window and a drive-through. And throughout our district, we've always been known as the store that no one really cares about. So all of our concerns that we were having over, our parking lot not being big enough, having no space for inventory, to where like there were some days where partners couldn't even use the bathroom because we don't have enough staffing to figure out where we're going to put all of our inventory. Countless other things. And they came down really hard on our LGBTQ IA plus partners specifically, saying that they were going to lose out on their FFS surgeries. They said that all of these benefits that Starbucks provides are going to get taken away from the union. And they also accused one of our trans partners who had come to them with concerns about losing those benefits. They pulled her aside in a meeting with our district manager and our store manager proxy and accused her of stealing $20,000 worth of deposits over the course of like 6 months with no evidence other than she was seen in a video walking away from the safe one day. But there was no evidence of her actually taking money. And she looked at them and said, I'm a trans woman. I will end up in a man's prison if you, press charges against me. And they were just like, oh, we had no idea that would happen. If they're, Starbucks has a policy and a plan where you can just pay the money back. And then they're like, well, if you don't fess up to doing it, do you know anyone else who did it? So, they're just trying to pin this entire thing on our partners. But yeah, we've thankfully stayed pretty strong considering, but that partner unfortunately was also fired because she forgot to lock our drive-through window one day. So she's also still fighting for her reinstatement. But of course, the claims of her stealing $20,000 were dropped. So yeah, so I guess that's a plus. Yeah.
All right, and then so these are stories of the union busting and going on, and now we'll jump right into the retaliation, singling out.
So I would say that going into just starting the union, I knew what I was putting myself into, but I didn't at the same time because I was just looking at what happened in Buffalo and, having just, the meetings all the time. And it wasn't really like that in my store. For some reason, I was their only target. And the following shift after we got over 12 to 14 union cards, they decided to give me a write-up, which they call it only documentation for some reason, and it went back almost 6 months to stuff that I either brought to their attention or they never brought to my attention. And it just showed me at that moment, okay, they really don't care about, they're looking in the long run, and right now they might be losing profit, but they think in the end, all this union busting, it's going to help them in the end, which in my opinion it's not. But I just realized that they're going to do anything. You could literally be the best person in your store. You could give your all. You could work doubles. You could skip your lunches. You could basically be a manager and you're not getting paid for one. But if you are a threat, if you go against the status quo, they will do anything to get rid of you. And That's what happened with me. I say that I got fired because I care too much. And I don't want to see my partners, myself, now like my new union family, everyone go through all this. It's not fair. And I realized that it doesn't really matter how much you give in. If you're a threat, you're gone. So I just think that it's very important to know that when you do go into it, there's always going to be, there's always going to be, what if this happened? What if this happens? And how I say it is, right now, it's a war, and we're going to lose battles, we're going to win battles, and people are going to get hurt, people are going to get fired, like me, like Lydia, which she got reinstated, thankfully, and Memphis 7, which were 7 people that got fired all in the same day. So I think just us knowing what we're going into and knowing that we will have to fight. It will take time. We will lose some battles, but at the end, as long as we get back up, we continue, we will win this war. And the retaliation, it sucks so much, but as long as we're here for each other, that's all that matters. And I mean, they'll give you a write-up for anything, even stuff that's not true. So I don't know how to go into retaliation because I'll be here for days, honestly. But I mean, just at the end of the day, watch your back because they'll switch your words around.
I think one of the themes of retaliation is that, Starbucks hasn't fired an entire committee like they did in Memphis everywhere. They haven't closed stores like they did in Buffalo and Ithaca everywhere. But they've done it enough to create that fear and try to create examples that they then use to scare everyone across the entire country with. And post about this, on Partner Hub and post flyers in the back room of every store. They're doing that with the benefits threats currently, where Howard Schultz, announced all of these new benefits, some of which we had proposed at the bargaining table, and then said, oh, but if you unionize or if someone in your store starts talking about unionizing, then you won't be eligible for those. And, those extend to every facet of people's lives, including the trans healthcare benefits that are being threatened. And I want to shout out Josh Adelson if he's here for his amazing coverage of that. But I think the main theme is the psychological warfare of this union busting, and I'm going to turn it over to Will to talk a little more about that.
So on the very last day of our campaign in Buffalo, right before the ballots went out, it was Starbucks's last legal opportunity to hold a captive audience meeting. And I wasn't scheduled for a meeting. I was scheduled for work to go onto the floor. But when I got there, they said, so stay clocked in, drive half a mile down the road, and there's a hotel conference room on the right. Go there, you have a meeting. It's a store meeting, and it's mandatory. But when I got there, I didn't have any coworkers there. It was just management. It was actually 6 managers, ranging from, some of these support managers that I talked about before who were, just there to hear from me. But also people like Shannon Garcia, who's one of the executive vice presidents from the company. And they knew that I was pro-union. They knew that I was strongly pro-union. And they thought, how do we get this person to vote no? Because that's going to be really hard for us to do. So what they did is they went through every single benefit that Starbucks offers and said, if you vote yes for a union, we're maybe going to have to take that away. If you vote yes for a union, your district manager is right here. We know you want to be promoted. If you vote yes, that's going to be really difficult for us to do. They said, with a union, you're going to be on an island, and you'll be all alone, and no one's going to be able to help you. Funnily enough, I kind of had that feeling being in that room alone with 6 managers, and it was the union that did help me through that. So that was back in November. This second story, though, is a little bit more recent. I have a lot of pins on my shirt right now, and one of them is a pin that says, "You are not alone." It is actually not a union pin. It is a American Foundation for Suicide Prevention pin. And it is actually the reason that I have recently been forced onto a leave of absence at Starbucks, because in trying to enforce new rules to try to, make work more difficult for people, they have said now that, what normally before was the policy of you can basically wear any pin that you want to, they've decided to target this specific pin as being unacceptable, not befitting of a Starbucks cafe, and a personal issue that I'm supposed to get over, and just take it off. But I've refused to do that, and so they've put me on a leave of absence. And this has been especially upsetting because we had an organizer and a partner of mine, Catherine Bergman, who killed herself 2 months ago. It's unbelievable that a company that shares itself as being a different kind of company would take such harsh actions and refuse to do the right thing when it's so clear to every person all through the corporate line that this is not the right thing to do. And they've told me now that I have 25 days to get over it. But I'm not going to get over it in 25 days, and I'm not going to let a company tell me when I'm allowed to mourn my friend.
And these are obviously horrible stories, and so now we're going to bring it back to where we've actually, fought back, and how do partners stand up and stand strong in these situations?
Yeah, I think at least in my store, for the retaliation, the union busting that was happening, it was very clear that we needed to take strong action pretty immediately. Thankfully, at my store, we were all pretty unanimous for deciding that we were ready to strike before our vote count. And we did this because of, our captive audience meetings, the accusation of theft. And so we were able to shut the store down even when we accidentally had a partner tip off our manager that we were going to strike that week, and we decided, you know what, we're still going to do it. And yeah, it was super cool. Yeah, we were able to shut it down from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. Unfortunately, what followed was more retaliation, with myself being fired, and then the same week we had 2 other partners fired. They fired me because I had a sunburn from being at the strike, and so I had an elevated temperature, and they said that I put partners' health and well-being at risk because I came into work with an elevated temperature. And then they fired another partner for being violent and threatening after he told our store manager Proxy that he had a hard time standing up for himself. So very violent and threatening behavior. And then the last partner that they fired was the partner that was relying on this company for her FFS surgery. They knew that, and they bullied her. And after that, we decided we're going to withhold labor for 3 days because our other partners are terrified before a vote count. We want to protect them from being retaliated against and fired. And so we shut our store down again for 3 days. Which, some people told us we were crazy for doing that before our vote count. Other people were just super supportive and thought it was pretty badass of us. But honestly, the community support is really what made that possible. Without that, I don't think any of us would have felt comfortable withholding labor for 3 more days after the 3 firings. And it just goes to show that the customer and community loyalty to partners is so much stronger than their loyalty to people like Howard Schultz. Like, they just cannot compete to the level of community that the working class has for each other. And I guess the other big thing with this story is that 42 days after I was fired, I was actually offered my job back from Starbucks. So even they knew that they really messed up with firing me. But it's definitely something that isn't a complete win until all, I believe it's close to 40 partners now that have been fired across the country. So until we all are reinstated, it will not be, an official win, in my opinion. But yeah, we're doing everything we can to fight back, and I think just having that support and camaraderie with each other really makes all the difference.
So in Buffalo, my store at Elmwood was the first store in the country to go on strike. When we did that, we were still the only certified unionized store. And we did it over COVID safety at the height of the Omicron surge. And I personally didn't even know this was going to be happening because it was a spontaneous walkout. I woke up to 5 missed calls and rushed to grab an apron and pick up a shift that I knew I was going to walk out of. But we had no idea what we were doing or how it was going to reverberate within the campaign because, we didn't want people to be terrified or for Starbucks to start saying, which they did start saying, that, oh, look, you unionize and then they're going to, suddenly make you go on strike. But I don't think people took that message the way Starbucks wanted them to. I think people were like, oh, you were able to take action and not get COVID at work? Can we do that? And I think that actually fueled a lot of people reaching out to us and starting organizing. And I also want to say the community support during our whole campaign, including the strike, including our election, was incredible. From people coming in, including this regular who comes in every morning, right it open, and orders a black coffee and says 2 words like, hi, thank you. And he suddenly started bringing in Ziplocs of union pins and giving them to us. And, if we're supposed to make customer connections, we made so many customer connections during this union campaign.
I can't stress enough how important the community is in our fight to unionize. I think we're very fortunate in Boston to have such an active and supportive community throughout all of this. When the Memphis 7 was fired, we were able to come together and rally with several other unions in Boston, including the Coalition of Black Trade Unionists and the Boston School Bus Drivers Union. And we came together again for a workers' power demonstration. But I think the biggest moment of community support that really meant the whole world to me was our vote count. For our vote count, we actually made these cute little invitations, and we gave them to our regulars at work and invited them to join us at the Brookline Booksmith, which is a unionized bookstore in Boston. And I was so excited to see these regulars streaming in so they could watch us win, including one of our regulars, Joe, who is always so supportive of us. He's a very chatty customer, and to see him there, it's very special. It is very special to see people who, you think are just there to get coffee, but then they show up to see that you're winning a union. They are not there to just get coffee. They're there for so many more reasons. I think that's incredibly special to us. And another thing that we did too was we hosted a community webinar where we invited our community and a bunch of other Starbucks workers, unionized or not, to come join us and listen to baristas talk about their experiences. And we had the support of a local law school professor who began the conversation by really hyping us up. Because I can't stress enough, a lot of us just started organizing. Some of us didn't know what a union was until we Googled it. So we're getting the support from our community and being encouraged by them, hyped up by them. I think that is something that really keeps us going in these times of difficulties. When we're sitting in these captive audience sessions, we know that the next day we're going to be able to see Joe. We know that the next day we're going to be able to get a whole bunch of unions to support us and keep us going. And I think that is just incredibly important right now.
When my store first started organizing, and then the second store in Jacksonville started organizing, I started to get kind of bummed out because we weren't really experiencing the same things that I was like seeing across the country. People didn't mobile order to my store, you know, with their Union Strong name. I didn't have our community boards over by the bathrooms in the corner, and we weren't having people come in and write sticky notes. And occasionally I would have someone come through the drive-thru and say something, but it was just so here and there that you kind of forgot about it. And so I have been working really hard, and my committee and partners from around the state have been working really hard to bring the community support to us. I worked closely with our chapter of DSA and some other community organizing members. And we did this fun little sit-in or a sip-in where we like caravanned. Our stores are on the same street, but they're like about 20 minutes away from each other. And we started at my store, and we kind of just like, we wanted to build a presence in the store. You know, it's to intimidate management a little bit, but it's also to like show my partners, like, I promise you there are people who have gone through very similar things, and they want to see us succeed, and they love and they support us, and we're going to sit here and we're going to let you know that. And so we started at my store, and we put some sticky notes up, and then they got taken down. We went and put more back up, and then they got taken down, and we put more back up. And then we all got up and we went to the other location, and that was cool because a lot more people were able to make it to the second one, and I was able to meet like Teamsters for the first time. I had never met anybody from the Teamsters. I was able to meet people from the IBEW. I had never met people from that, and I met teachers from Duval, and so that was really cool to get to have those conversations in a Starbucks too. Like I don't know, it was funny because like the manager's on bar, and we're all like, so in my union, and well, how about your union, and then in this union, and so like, yay, Starbucks union. So it was really fun to get to foster that environment inside the store, because Starbucks prides themselves on building that third place in that community. And so I was like, screw it, I'm gonna bring it into the store. I'm gonna bring it into our stores.
Yeah, the community has been incredible. We had several rallies at our store. We had about 5 different rallies, and we had support from local unions. At one of those rallies, we were actually kicked off the property, and Layla had a plan. She said, "Let's take it to the streets," and that's what we did. And so there's a store that's about a half a mile walk from our store. It's called Chauncey. So we walked down to Chauncey. My point being is that the AFL, some folks from the AFL-CIO had joined us at that rally, and there's this older gentleman that's a veteran. And it was just so incredible because this older gentleman, I said, "Are you sure you want to do this walk?" It was kind of hot, and he said, "Nope, I'm coming. So he trekked down there to Chauncey with us, and it was just awesome. But and then we ended up having a local political leader that showed up down there, and then a bunch of other folks from the AFL-CIO showed up, and they said, "Hey, you know what? We'll go into the Chauncey store and get everybody water, because there's about 25 of us, and we were thirsty." So they went in the store and got us 25 waters. So I'm sure they loved that. And if anybody's been a barista, you love that when somebody, yeah. Anyway, but yeah, and they brought us popsicles, everything. It was incredible. And then when we, right after, shortly after a lot of the retaliation that went on, we did a rally down in Mesa. We went from Mesa to the Crimson store and then up to our store. But anyway, people started driving, as after Mesa won their election, and they would say, hey, what can we do to support Scottsdale Mayo? And so Michelle's folks would send Mesa, people would drive all the way up from Mesa to our store to get a Union Strong coffee. That's like, well, I'm in Chicago, so that's like a 30-mile drive, okay? They would drive like 30 miles to get a Union Strong coffee. This is pretty incredible. And then I have to give a big shout out to the Teamsters because we needed a venue for our election. It was our store, the Avondale store, and the 7th Street and Bell store, and we needed a venue. And so I called up the Teamsters and I just said, hey, we need some help. Can you help us out? And they're like, oh, you know what? Our home is your home. Come on in. And it was fantastic. Literally, they let us have the place all day long because it was an all day long thing. You know how those elections are. And so the Teamsters was absolutely fabulous as well. And the local community groups that have helped us. It's just, and then I have to say, you know, the media has helped us as far as getting our message out to the public. The local TV stations, a couple of them have like followed us like almost from the start, and that's just helped get our message out to the community and people come. Now that the cafe's open, they closed the cafe down for months because they didn't want organizers coming in to the cafe. And but now that the cafe's open back up, you know, we have our customers coming in that support us, and so it really helps us out a lot, especially when times are tough.
And then we're going to wrap this up in just a moment. But I really want to say thank you guys for coming. And I think that it's important that, you know, your support for us means everything. And so we're going to, you know, tell you guys a little bit how you can continue that support. And it would continue to mean everything to us.
Okay, yes. So one way that y'all can help is as soon as you walk out of those doors, there will be some copies of a petition that y'all can sign, as well as QR codes to scan, telling Starbucks, no contract, no coffee. So y'all can sign that. So y'all can sign that and demand that Starbucks also sign on to the fair elections principles that Buffalo has been pushing for them to sign since they first filed. And that's one way that y'all can support us.
Another big thing that is really helpful is sharing and, if possible, donating to solidarity funds for retaliated partners that have been fired across the country. As well as, you know, just showing up when you're able to for rallies, for sit-ins, any sort of call to action. Having that community support not only shows, you know, the partners that you're there for them, but it also shows management that the community's not going to just sit back and allow partners to be treated this way, and that, you know, you all have our backs. And yeah, it means a lot to all of us.
We've got to make it socially unacceptable to be a union buster, and we need all of your help. Please keep calling on Starbucks, on Howard Schultz, and on the Starbucks Board of Directors Chair, Melody Hubson, to sign the fair election principles and stop union busting and actually negotiate with us in good faith. We are going to need everybody working together to help put pressure on this company. Howard Schultz keeps saying he has no intention of bargaining in good faith, which on the one hand is great because this company is a ULP machine, but it's also not great because we want to get a contract. So thank you all for having our backs. And
Thank you.
Thank you.